In the case of Cash Gernon, Darriynn Brown has been charged with capital murder after Cash's blood was found on various items that belonged to Darriynn and were collected from his home. There have been wild theories spread across social media about Monica, the woman who had been taking care of Cash and Carter, and her son Cameron, and people thought they were somehow involved. People have made assumptions and accusations that I personally do not agree with. I feel like people are trying to place blame on anyone that they can. Everyone else seems to be to blame, and less responsibility is put on the actual perpetrator, which is exactly where it should be. What I would like to bring more awareness to is the fact that Darriynn Brown was schizophrenic. He had been in trouble with the law before, but was still out roaming around in this neighborhood. Before I go any further, I want to say that not all people who suffer from schizophrenia are violent. Some can live a somewhat normal life, and they do not commit crimes, but some do. Some people do not get the proper help that they need and do have episodes where they become violent and hurt people. There are a slew of symptoms that they can have, including agitation, aggression, confusion, hallucinations, paranoia, and hearing voices. In many cases, mental illness plays a huge role when lives are lost. Darryn's behavior before this tragic event happened should have been taken more seriously. A neighbor said that Darriynn was walking around with a hammer. He was breaking people's cameras, sneaking around people's homes. The neighbor said that when he spoke to Darriynn, he immediately knew that Darriynn had mental problems because he would be talking to himself. It was clear that something was not right with him. If other people that didn't know Darriynn could tell that mentally he wasn't right, then it should have been blatantly obvious to his family members that he had mental issues. If my son was walking around talking to himself, if I knew he was schizophrenic, I wouldn't want him out wandering around by himself. He could have an episode and start hallucinating, and I wouldn't want someone to hurt him or for him to hurt someone else. I probably wouldn't let him out of my sight. I want to share a story about my experience with a schizophrenic person who seemed a lot like Darriynn Brown. My mother had a baby kind of late in life. I was 19 when my little brother was born, and I babysat him while my mom went to work. I saw this lady walking down the road that went right by our house. She was a good distance away from us, but as she got closer, my little brother stopped playing and hid behind my leg. While I'm trying to figure out why he's suddenly so scared, I look up as she's walking right past me. She takes about 2 steps past me and stops dead in her tracks, and just stares at me for about 10 seconds flat. I had no idea why she was staring at me, but she wasn't saying a word. At this time, it doesn't even occur to me that she may have some kind of mental problems. I was just thinking, why is this woman staring at me? So I just kind of nonchalantly threw both my hands up and said, "What?" And I'm looking at her like, What do you want? My little brother started whining, and he's pulling on my clothes, trying to pull me away from her. Finally, this woman speaks, and she says, "Oh, nothing, I was just..." And she kind of mumbles a few more words that I couldn't really understand, and then suddenly her voice changes. It changed from like a high-pitched, almost childlike tone to a very deep, almost like demonic. And she says, "You stupid little bitch." And I just stood there in shock. The way that her voice changed was really creepy, and I thought, this woman is like demon possessed. So she walks away and we go inside, and when my mom came home from work, I told her about it and I went home. The next morning, I go back to my mom's to watch my little brother, and she says, "That woman came back yesterday looking for you." Her and my brother were outside that same evening, and she came walking by again. She said when she saw me, she started walking towards me really fast, almost like charging at her. She said when she got closer, she stopped, and she started mumbling to herself. My mom said she was saying, "That's not the same girl, but that's the same little boy, but that's not the same girl," just over and over repeating this. She could tell that the lady was confused, and she said she just kept standing there mumbling. So my mom said she just looked at her and said, "Well, we're going to go inside now. We'll talk to you later." And the woman said, "Okay," and she left. So now I'm even more creeped out by this woman, because it seems like she's looking for me or wanted to confront me. I didn't know what her problem was with me. Honestly, I was afraid to take my little brother outside after that. That demonic voice she spoke in just really scared me, and I just felt like she was dangerous. We started to ask people around the neighborhood if they had had any problems with her. There was a local gas station nearby that she always walked to, and the people that worked there said that she would always come in and buy 2 sodas and 2 candy bars. And they watched her, and she would walk outside and sit down next to the store, and she would set the drink down beside her with the candy bar, and then she would sit and drink her drink and eat her candy bar, and she would get up and walk away and leave the brand new drink and candy bar sitting there. So one day, I'm at my mom's house watching my little brother, and the phone rings, and I answer it, and it's our neighbor. She lives like directly beside us. She says, "Are you outside?" And I said no, and she said, "Don't go outside, and make sure all of the doors and windows are locked." So she tells me what happened, and she said that this woman had knocked on her door and asked if she could come in and use the phone. The lady walks over and picks the phone up, and she said she didn't even dial a number. So Martha said it seemed like she was just pretending like she called somebody. So she was already kind of suspicious at that. So she was just kind of watching her. But she says the lady puts the phone down and then starts talking to herself. And she says, "My boys are up there. I need to get to my boys." She's talking out loud, and Martha can hear her talking about her needing to get upstairs to get to her boys. So she walks over and sort of stands in the stairway. She fought with this lady, and she said eventually she had shoved her back enough to where she could shove her out the door. The police told her that they had had several run-ins with her, that she has tried to do this to other people in the neighborhood. They said that they have been called with situations about her on many occasions, and they have actually arrested her on many occasions. And they said that she was a schizophrenic and she had no family. She lived alone in an apartment that was nearby. There wasn't really much that they could do. They said they could arrest her and hold her for as long as they could. She had basically just been in and out of jail for several years, and there was no one there to help her. I really felt bad for her after hearing her story, knowing that she had children and that her kids were taken from her. At some point, she must be imagining that her kids are still there with her. She had become someone that the neighborhood was afraid of. This happened years ago, and I still think back on this and wonder how she's doing. Why was he out walking around in this neighborhood? I believe some of the responsibility should fall on Darryynn's mother and the people that were close to him, people in his family who knew that he wasn't well, but still allowed him to come and go and do as he pleased. It's a tough situation because police can't just arrest people because they're afraid they might do something. They can't arrest them until after they've actually committed a crime, and by then it's too late. We need to have better regulations for people with mental disorders. Schizophrenia is very serious. People who suffer from it, who have shown violent tendencies, should not be wandering around neighborhoods with no one looking after them, no guidance, and no one supervising them when they have a history of suspicious or violent behavior. It is a disaster waiting to happen. People can be hurt or worse, and it needs to be taken more seriously.